This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so Parsha Tzav, the second of the Parshiot of Vayikra, and is dealing mostly with the instructions for the Kohanim. This is the book of the Kohanim, as Ramban calls it, the instructions for the Kohanim. And as we've been saying, there are many, many lessons that we can learn from the Karbanot, even though we're not bringing Karbanot today. But there are many lessons that can be learned from these Karbanot. And also, based on a request, I want to touch upon Parsha Zachor that we read last week and Parsha's Parah that we read this week. We have four special Haftorah and readings, Maftir and Haftorah readings at the end of the Torah reading in Shabbos morning. And these are 4 weeks as we make our way towards Pesach. The first was Parshat Shkalim, and that was either on or before the start of the month of Adar. Shkalim are the coins, and starting with Nisan, the month of Nisan, which is the first of the months, so all of the karbanot need to be brought from new donations. Therefore, starting with the month of Adar, a month before, there was the announcement that everybody needs to send their machatzita shekel, send their half shekel to the Beit HaMikdash, to the Mishkan. So before the month of Adar, we read Shkalim. Leah Shabbos, which is right before Purim, we read Zachor. This coming Shabbos, we read Parah. Zachor was about Amalek. We'll discuss that soon. And this Shabbos, we read Parah. We'll discuss that. And then the last of the four is Parshat HaChodesh, which is about the new Rosh Chodesh. And the first of the Rosh Chodeshes, which of course is Nisan. And as we are making our way through Purim and then to Pesach. But let's start with just a few ideas on the Parsha itself, and we'll see again how they can relate to us. So we're Parak Vav, Pasuk Aleph, chapter 6, verse 1, page 568. Hashem said to Moshe, saying, Tzav et Aharon, command Aharon, ve'et banav, and his sons Lemor, saying, Zot Torat Ha'olah. This is the law, or these are the instructions of the Olah, of the ascent, the elevation offering. He ha'olah, that is that which ascends, al mokdah, onto the flame, al hamizbeach, on the altar, kol halayla, ad haboker, the entire night, ad haboker, until the morning, the eish hamizbeach to kadbo, and the fire of the altar will stay upon it. And then we're taught, V'lavasha kohen midova, the kohen will put on his linen garments, umichnesei vad, right? The midova, that is the shirt, michnesei vad, or the pants, yilbash al b'saro, ve'hirim et hadeshen asher tochala eish et ha'olah, and he will lift up the ashes that the fire consumed et ha'olah, of that olah on the altar, v'samo eitzel hamizbeach, and then he'll place it next to the altar. Upashat et bigadav, he'll take off those garments, put on other garments, and bring the ashes out michutz lamachaneh el makom tahor. Bring those ashes out of the camp to a pure place. So the Kohen, right? We have a puzzle. We say Hashem is mashpil geim umagbia shefalim. Hashem is mashpil. He humbles, lowers those who are in a lofty position, those who are literally haughty, umagbia shefalim, and he lifts up those who are lowly. And we see how the Torah works so diligently for a person to have the proper balance. One of the topics that often comes up at these rabbinic conferences that I attend is, and sometimes we have, each time we have Mrs. Schachter, that's Rabbi J.J. Schachter's wife, who's a therapist, give a session to us on, and typically it has to do with maintaining our balance, right? In terms of who we are, just really trying to stay balanced. So here we have the Kohanim. They are in such a lofty position, right? They are the spiritual agents for the children of Israel. What is the very first thing they have to do in the morning? Clean up, custodial work. Huh? That's the first of the avoda that they do, of the temple avoda that they do. Yes, even their personal prayers are going to be somewhat interwoven with the avoda they do in the Beit HaMikdash at different points, because they're starting well before daybreak, right? Because the tamid, the daily morning sacrifice, was just at daybreak. So they're starting before daybreak. It's too early to daven shacharis, right? They're not quite doing that yet. So the first thing they need to do is some custodial work. They need to clean out the ashes from the day before. So on one hand, you have those who have the loftiest position, right? They don't hire some guy to do it, right? They themselves do this trumat hadeshen, right? And lifting up the ashes. That's considered part of the avoda. And Rav Hirsch also explains very, very beautifully that the avoda begins with yesterday's ashes. Right? Rav Hirsch was a superhero in fighting against the assimilation and the reform in Germany, and this was this was his idea. This was what he was all about. That we start today's avoda service with the ashes of yesterday's avoda. We don't reject, we don't denigrate, right? That yesterday's avoda, we need a service, we need to build upon that. We need to take that and then move forward with that. And that's the only way we could start today, is with building upon the avoda of the day before. And that's who we are as a people. We build upon the past. We don't get locked into the past. We move towards the future without rejecting and denigrating the past. In next week's parsha, actually, we have some of the kashrut laws coming up, and there we've mentioned before this very, very interesting idea that the two requirements for a kosher animal is to chew its cud and to have split hooves. Chewing its cud is a regurgitation of the past, and the hooves is movement, is moving forward. And we noted that the Western world, they are the pig eaters. And the Western world is all about the new technology. You need the iPhone, whatever they're up to now, I don't even know anymore, right? And everything else is just so outdated. I remember Natalie and I when we first moved here, we used Craigslist to find a nice dining room set. And we went to a house, a very beautiful set, right? This was, I guess, 2008, 2009, right? And so in conversation, the person said to us, "Yeah, this is like so 2002." Like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? I just recycle my ties. They just keep coming back in and out of style. Like, what does that mean? So the Western world is all about the pig, all about the future, the split hooves moving forward. And the Middle Eastern world, we'll call it, right? That's well identified with the camel, right? And so the pig has its split hooves, but doesn't chew its cud. The camel chews its cud, but doesn't have split hooves. And that is the Middle Eastern world. They have to avenge the battle of 1470, and their wealth actually comes from oil, which is fossil fuel, which is things that have decomposed over time. Right? They're all about the past. And a Jew has to eat animals that both chew its cud and have split hooves, meaning chew its cud in appreciation for the past and split hooves and moving resolutely forward. So that is the idea. The Parsha begins. The first of the avoda is taking of the ash, trumat hadeshen, the lifting up of the ashes, right? And so the Torah is making sure that the Kohanim don't get too haughty in their positioning. At the same time, we have throughout that when we have a person bringing the simplest of offerings, the least expensive, which is the meal offering, so there the Torah uses the term nefesh, because in a soul, that when a person is giving that small amount, that is the most that they can, it's as if they are giving their very nefesh, their very soul. So echad hamarbe, the echad hamamit, the same. It doesn't make a difference if you're doing a lot, if you're doing a little, if you're doing what you can. As long as a person's heart is focused on the heavens, that is very, very dear and precious to Hashem. So we have Hashem making sure that those in the lofty positions don't get haughty, don't get fat-headed, and those who are in the lowly positions or lowly standing, that they recognize their value and their worth. The Or HaChaim, which I'm enjoying so much this year, the Or HaChaim says that in a derech remez, in a way of a hint, this is telling us how to make it through. This is giving us chizuk, strengthening, a hug, as to how we will make our way through this long, arduous galus, exile that we are in. And he looks at that first pasuk. Tzav es Aaron, command Aaron and his sons, saying, Zot Torat Ha'olah. These are the instructions, or this is the pathway, the roadmap of Ha'olah, of those who will ascend out of this difficult galus, out of this difficult exile. He Ha'olah, this will be the ultimate Olah, the ultimate ascent from this galus. How will it happen? Al Mokdah, Al HaMizbeach. Al Mokdah is on the flame, right? Halo kol dvarai ke'esh nu'um Hashem. The pasuk says, "Behold, my words are like fire," says Hashem. According to the Medrash, when Moshe saw the words of the Torah, it was black fire on white fire. Torah is compared to fire. Al Mokdah. It'll be through our Torah, through our connection to Torah, by staying connected to the Torah. We were in exile. We still are to a degree, at least, but we've returned to the land of Israel now. But for thousands of years, we were in exile without any ability to return, or very limited ability to return to Israel, and yet we survived. We survived. Those who stayed somewhat connected to the Torah survived. Otherwise, we assimilated, we just faded away, faded into the nations around us. There's a beautiful. It was posted on the Jewish Journeys. This story of a pastor in Colombia who returned to his Jewish roots and realized that, especially in many of the Spanish-speaking countries, many of them are descendants of those Marranos, and they still have certain practices that they've always done, not really knowing. So there's so many of us who have just melted into the surroundings. So al Mogdah, it'll be through the Torah, al hamizbeach, and through the altar. The altar is the suffering, the difficulties that we've had, which serve as a which we understand will hasten the redemption. That all of that tsa'ar, all of that anguish, goes into the whole overall calculation. That's kol halayla ad haboker. That's how we will make our way through kol halayla, the entire night, this long, long night, ad haboker, until we can reach that boker, until we could reach that morning, that light of the redemption. The Eish HaMizbeach tu kadbo. The fire of the altar will remain aflame, and we will reach that point of that geula. So that is part of the remez that the Or HaChaim brings on this pasuk on a deeper level. What it's also alluding to. Yes.
So how does the Mizbeach represent or compare to like trouble or difficulty? So I understand.
Mizbeach is sacrifices. Is burning is sacrifices, right? And the pain that we go through serves as an atonement for us also. The tsar that we go through serves as atonement. Yeah. Okay, so Judy, you had asked a little bit about Parsha Zachor and Parshas Parah, last week's special laning and this week's special laning. So the Shabbos before Purim, that is, of course, we read Parshas Zachor. Haman was Haman Ha'agagi, he was known as. Who is Agagi? What does Agagi mean? Yeah, a descendant from Agag, right? And Agag, similar to Paro, being not an individual's name, but the name of Mr. President or Mr. Prime Minister, right, of Egypt, Agag, I believe, was Mr. King of Amalek. And Haman was unique. Well, Amalek is unique. Well, let's unpack this a little bit. We've had many who have caused us lots of tsar, right? Mitzrayim caused us tremendous anguish, right? We've had the Plishtim, Edom, Moab, right? The Nach Yomi, the chapter day of Navi, is going through Shoftim now. And there is no shortage of those who have caused us this tsar, fought against us, tried to destroy us. So why do we have this focus on Amalek? What is unique about Amalek?
I read that people make things up like they're rich, they control this, they talking about Jewish people. Amalek doesn't care about any of that. They just have this hatred based on nothing. And they just want to kill us.
Yeah, good. Yeah, not good, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Right? The other nations had reasons to fight. Right? Mitzrayim was afraid that we would population explode and take over their land. We come into the land of Israel. We fought battles for the land of Israel with Joshua, Yehoshua. So these were nations that were there along the way. We have Balak afraid that the children of Israel will come and overwhelm him. They all had their legitimate concerns. And that's what they came to fight about. Amalek, we're not going to their land, we're not going through their land. There it was, this baseless hatred of, call it of Kedusha, of holiness, whatever it is, right? It was this absolute blind hatred, which we see today. We see that today so clearly. You have people who have no idea of what's actually going on, but if it involves Israel, if it involves the Jews, then it is absolute kryptonite. And and no good can be done. No bad that's done to us could possibly be bad enough, and no good that we do can ever be good enough. It is this blind hatred, this baseless hatred. And we often speak about sinat chinam and avat chinam. And the only way that we can, you can't fight irrationality. The only way is we need to do whatever we can on a physical plane, on a political, physical, etc. But ultimately, as the Gemara says, before the coming of the Mashiach, we'll reach a point of ein lanu lihi sha'ein ella al avinu shebashamayim, that we cannot rely on anyone or anything, only on Avinu Shebashamayim, only on our Father in Shamayim. And the first step that we need to do is that if they have that sinat chinam against us, then we need to work on our sinat chinam and to turn that into avat chinam in terms of being together and being united with one another. I want to share with you, I was originally planning on speaking about this on Shabbos, but then as I was walking to shul, I thought to myself, this is too heavy, and I can't do that at a bar mitzvah. So I pulled an audible at the line of scrimmage, and I went in a different direction. But this was an article posted by my niece, Miriam Ciner Friedman, who lives in Israel. And she wrote as follows: remember what Amalek did to you. Zachor et asher asalacha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you. Every year, she writes, I come to shul the Shabbat before Purim to hear these words read from the Torah, to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did to me. I never connected to it. It felt at best weird, at worst distasteful. Remember what Amalek did to you? A millennia-old grudge? Isn't that kind of whiny, provincial? And then this year I discovered that I have a memory problem. On October 7th, I was shocked to my core, shocked at the gruesomeness, the cruelty, the pure hatred so foreign to me that can make those acts possible. My frames of reference to try to make sense of what happened were pogroms, the Holocaust. I felt I was in a new reality, having to face what Jews have faced all along: violence, brutality, hatred. I picked up an essay by Yoram Hazony, someone had printed and left in my living room, and read, quote, for the first time in a generation, the issue is understood by many to be the existence of a Jewish state of any dimensions. It's not, how much land should we be willing to give up? It's the existence of a Jewish state of any dimensions. And many Israelis have suddenly found themselves in a world which resembles that in which their fathers and mothers lived, and which they themselves had until now known only from history books. The words resonated. And then I looked at the date of the article, 2002. I was disoriented as memories flooded my mind, suicide bombs, Sbarros, Moment, Cafe Rimon, Machane Yehuda, bus after bus after bus, bloody hands and a euphoric face in a Ramallah window, the crowd going wild below. I forgot, I forgot, I forgot. I have been here before. I have a memory problem. I seem unable to hold on to the fact that real evil exists in the world, that it poses a real threat. My mind so powerfully resists this. I want so badly for people to be, if not good, then fine, neutral. Just want to put bread on the table, give opportunities to their kids, live quiet lives. The bad people are the exceptions, the extremists, the fringe. There was a plan for October 7th that never took place. For 40 years, Kibbutz Kfar Aza held an annual event, a kite festival. The residents made kites with messages of peace and love and set them airborne over the fence that separated them from Gaza. To let the people of Gaza know that their neighbors wish them only good, peaceful lives, a gesture of pure sweetness and humanity. For the past 15 years, the event had been organized by Aviv Kutz. Aviv was 54. He lived in Kfar Aza with his wife, Livnat, and their 3 teenage children, Rotem, Yonatan, and Yiftach. On the morning of October 7th, he doubtless had everything ready to go for the kite festival. At dawn, hundreds of terrorists and civilians stormed the kibbutz. They were the intended recipients of the kites of peace, the people on the other side of that fence. Among the murdered were all 5 members of the Kutz family. We forget. We in fact have a memory problem. It may be part of who we are to forget. Jews are called Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim, merciful people who are the children of merciful people. The Rambam says that not being merciful is grounds to doubt someone's Jewish lineage. Our national anthem is entitled simply Hatikva, the hope. This is what makes us who we are, what makes us able to shine the light of redemption to the whole world. But our mercy and our hope also give us a tragic, fatal liability. We have a memory problem, which is why we need this strange, distasteful, that feels counter to mercy. This is why we need this strange, distasteful, that which feels counter to mercy and hope. Remember, we can't afford to forget. Wow.
How is your niece? Is she a regular journalist, or was this that she? That's the.
She's not a journalist, no.
So,
And to me, I think she really encapsulated. We lived, and she's right. 2002. We forget. We forget, but we have to remember that there exists this pure, unadulterated hatred out there. And we have to do what we can to strengthen ourselves, strengthen one another, and strengthen our people, strengthen our land, and to remain vigilant as we try to fight it. We try to fight it by doing the things that we can. Yeah.
I think we saw maybe a little taste of it, and not even to that extreme, at the Irvine City Council. I mean, some of those people, in another setting, who knows what it would have happened. But I mean, even here in Irvine, I think we saw that just the irrationality of it.
the extent of the internal vitriol.
Yeah.
And not even knowing us, just that we represented a different viewpoint.
Well, when you've been brainwashed your whole life.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah.
And I from that standpoint, I can see that there is
Yes.
Elohim, but it's the extent of it.
Yeah.
I've had problems.
In the Haftorah, like where it discusses, the, the king of Agag um, and killing all the people and all the animals and everything, like completely wiping out Amalek. I'm just wondering if that's, and I mean, Shmuel, comes and warns or rebukes Shaul for not doing that. So I'm just wondering, is this an argument against negotiating for hostages?
Exactly the opposite.
Well, you're letting these people go. You're not you're not
Yeah.
destroying them or keeping them in prison.
Maybe it's improperly placed.
That's a good
No.
point to share.
Yeah.
The purpose of hostages is to blackmail.
Yeah.
That's what we think.
Yeah. So Judy said, so can we release any of these terrorists, even if it means sacrificing our hostages?
I mean,
It's
Torah-wise, I think there's a reference from an incident with Abraham and one of the wars that relates to hostage.
Look.
Hostage negotiation, right?
Was captured?
Yeah.
No, they were not hostage. There was no attempt to
No,
negotiate.
there's
Lot.
not Lot, but there was something. Is there not something?
I'm not sure.
around there? The 5 kings and the 4
Yeah,
kings.
so,
There was
yeah.
something about hostages.
Yes. Yeah.
And King David, his people also had been taken, and when they were out fighting.
Look, nowadays, first of all, I just want to mention that even Amalek, according to the Rambam, we first reach out to them in peace. And if they want to live peacefully, so then we don't have this. It's when they are remaining as Amalek, that's when we go into this full out war of destroying everyone. Now, how to take these situations and apply it today? Look, in the Shemona Esrei, we ask Hashira Shovtena Kavarishana, bring back the judges like we used to have. Meaning, it's a tremendously difficult task, and you're going to have many different views on how we apply that to the situations today. We actually did a lunch and learn a while ago that there is a Mishnah that you can't redeem someone from more than their value, lest it will lead to their taking even more hostages, in the future. Right? This incentivizes them to keep doing that, and certainly, the Gilad Shalit exchange, where we released 1,000, and including the mastermind of this one and many of the other top commanders. So, again, I don't have any relative or dear close friend who is being held hostage. So I'm able to be somewhat detached from it. And I don't blame anyone who is in that situation for however they are reacting, because I can't judge if I'm not in that situation. But I would agree that it does not make sense to release more and more murderers and then have them just get ready to plan the next attack. But I hesitate, Judy, to extract, from these situations, and therefore what we need to do now with Hamas, with all the different pressures and all the different factors at play. So I'm hesitant on that.
My reference, actually, the reason the thought came up, which should have been when I initially asked the question, was on page 1215.
12:15.
This is at the very bottom. I mean, this is a commentary by
Mm-hmm.
the person who put
Right.
the stone chumash together. It's not part of chumash, but on the right side where he says at the very, very bottom, those who question how the God of mercy could order the execution of blameless people should take note. Saul's pity on Agag led to the near extermination of Israel by Haman. In the more distant future, the Roman Empire carried on the task of Esau, its ancestor. Was it indeed merciful to spare the Amalekites whose progeny were the cause of so much bloodshed?
Yeah. And these are
his thoughts.
correct. And these are very thought provoking. You know, the way that some phrase it is that in the early 1900s, you know, there was a woman with a stroller, right? And there was a terrible car accident, and the baby was in the hospital. Then the nurses said to the mother after a little while, "Don't worry, little Adolf will be fine." Right? It's not a true story, but you know, so in such a case, right? You know, we're so thrilled. Oh, the baby's okay, but who knows how much destruction any person could bring, right? And yes, with Amalek, yeah, you know, putting it into play is very, very dangerous and scary, right? And we don't know, right? Is Amalek a nation today? Is Amalek Hamas? Meaning, is Amalek those who are acting in such a way? Yes, Esther.
You know, that Haftorah reading, it's basically, I think, the story is, or the lesson is, with evil, you can't take any half measures. It's all or nothing. And I think that's what we're seeing, because, you know, Israel is taking a path and of kind of half measures, maybe listening to other countries. And of course, in our Western mind, that makes a lot of sense. But when you have what happened at the UN yesterday, and with Israel being, you know, condemned again, put on the chopping block, and the US not vetoing it, and then Hamas praising the action of the UN.
Yeah.
You know, if decisive action isn't taken against
and immediately rejecting the compromise, you know, that Israel had agreed to, because hey, right, time's on our side.
Yeah.
The world just keeps getting harder and harder on Israel. Yeah. It's really a incredibly frustrating, depressing, and frustrating situation.
And I still, you know, in the Shema blessings where we say, Ki Hu Levado, and then Baal Milchamot, you know, master of wars. And so is this all still in Hashem's Hashkava Pratis? And so then, you know, we appeal to Hashem and we say, oh, why? I mean, it's beyond our understanding, I know.
Yeah.
But is this Hashem saying, okay, world, I'm going to show you how it is when I don't do every little bit? Or
look, one of the things that we had
in
in Lunch and Learn last week that I did read on Shabbos, when I pivoted a little bit about what I'll be speaking about, is from the Ramchal, that everything that goes on in the world has its nigla and its nistar. It has that which is happening that's revealed to us, and then there is the inner essence of where everything is leading to. And he writes that everything is leading to Gilui Yichudo, the revelation of God's oneness. Everything is leading towards bringing this world to Tikkun HaKlali, to be its state of perfection. But he says, which we can certainly agree with, we have no way of understanding it when we look at it now. All we see is the superficiality, the external aspects of everything, and there's no way that we can understand that ultimately Mashiach will come, and then everything will become perfectly clear to us. Until then, we are left scratching our heads and just hoping and praying that this can somehow lead to better.
It seems like then that Hashem is, from our teeny limited understanding, is mastering and allowing,
yeah,
and even
allowing it for a greater purpose. Yeah. And I had a conversation with somebody about this yesterday. I learned with one of the shul members, and I said, a religion, which means a belief in God, has to contain within it a belief in a being that is far greater than us, that we are not going to fathom. At times we'll get a glimpse and it'll make sense to us, but we can't fathom it. It's right. If God is only as smart as I am, then we're all in trouble. Right? So I have to be willing to accept that I'm not going to get it all. That's just the reality. And as my niece wrote over here, right, Zachor is important because we like to look at things through these rosy glasses, and everyone just wants to have a good life with a little white picket fence in front of their yard, and their kids should do well, and food on the table, and unfortunately that is a very Western view of the world. And when we superimpose our Western view of what people want onto the Middle East and other parts of the world where that's not what they want, then we do so at our own peril. When the people are praying that their child should be a shaheed, and when the parents have such nachas when the child calls and said, I killed 10 Jews with my own hands, and the parents are just bursting with pride, right? So that's a very, very, very different matrix that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And when we impose our views of what we want, and therefore we think that's what everyone wants, onto those who have very different wants, then we do so at our own peril. And that is what Israel has woken up to. And can't just bow to the rest of the world because of their, it's really not right, come on. To me, it's just so incomprehensible. A ceasefire immediately. Does that include release of hostages? Does that include a dismantling of the terror network?
Does that include rockets from the north?
Right. Exactly. What does that mean? Yeah, I mean it's fantasy. It's fantasy. Yeah.
Although I must say, this so-called Western perspective or cultural indoctrination that you mentioned, it's actually sort of commanded, because we're commanded to mitzvah b'simcha and gamzu l'tova, to look at everything as positively and get along, and
but not to be delusional.
Not to be blind.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
to put the most like, even you see yellow on a table with meat, and you're supposed to assume it's margarine, because you're supposed to assume, give the benefit of the doubt.
Probably should ask.
No, I know.
Depending
but,
where you are.
But if you just
before
see
you
it passing,
before you
you're
put it
not
onto your
supposed to judge.
steak. Yeah.
So all those things are indoctrinated into the Torah to try and elevate
The Torah
us to,
tells us that we should try to see the positive, right? But at the same time, right, we can't be delusional.
I agree. But
yeah.
there's this.
Yeah.
Doesn't the Talmud say,
A dynamic
if someone is
paradox.
coming to kill you, rise up first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And we also have a beautiful expression, which is kabdehu v'chashdehu. Kabdehu, give him honor, v'chashdehu, but be suspicious. Right? And that's the famous with Gedalia ben Achikam. Trust and verify. Yeah. Yeah.
Nixon was Jewish.
Yeah.
Reagan.
Kabdeu v'chashdeu.
Huh?
Huh? Yes. So let's go a little bit to Parah. So Parah is when we speak about the quintessential chok. Chok is a law that we don't know the reason behind it. Not that there is no reason, but the reason has not been shared with us. And we often discuss how it's important that the Torah gives us these chukim, right? As opposed to explaining everything or not commanding us those that God doesn't want to explain. Because as we say so often, we have to recognize that we're serving a God. We're not serving our own mind, our own understanding. And therefore there are bound to be chukim. There need to be chukim that we follow because God said so, because the Torah commands us. I'm not serving my intellect, I'm serving Hashem. I'm serving the Torah. The quintessential chok is that whole process of the red heifer that is slaughtered, and then it's burned, and the ashes of that are mixed with spring water. They are sprinkled onto a person on day 3 and day 7 of their having become tamei, or day 3 and 7 of their purification process, and then they become tahor, then they become purified. And the reason why the Rabbanut, the chief rabbin in Israel, has a sign telling people not to go up onto the Temple Mount is because we are all tamei mate now. We have no means of purifying ourselves in the absence of the Parah Aduma. And there are certain areas up there which is actually the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. And we say Kedusha Rishona, Kitcha L'Shata, V'Kitcha L'Atid Lavo. The Kedusha, the holiness of that area, remains even after the destruction of the temple. And if a person who is ritually tamei, impure, is not allowed to go up there, right? And therefore, they say best not to go up at all. There are religious people who do go up, knowing or confident that they know which areas they have to stay clear of. And that is, if they do know, one who does know, that is perfectly legitimate. We're reading this now because the leading up to, the reason leading up to Pesach, we all needed to go through this purification process in order that we all would be able to eat from the Korban Pesach, from the Pesach sacrifice. So we need to get ourselves ready for Pesach. So we read this Parsha, which is about the actual ritual purification that took place. And even in the absence of that, how we all need to get ourselves ready to fully embrace and be able to take into ourselves that which the Pesach holiday is bringing. This is a thought that I had, a question. I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts. Why would it be that this, as I called it, quintessential chok, why would that be specifically by this tahara, this purification process? I mean, we have other chukim. We have shatnez, right? Not mixing wool and linen. We have many different chukim. Look, even basa b'chalav, not having milk and meat together. We can give reasons for it, right? But we have many things that we don't understand the reason for it. The Torah commands us. But why would this epitome, right? The Parsha begins, Parsha Chukot, Zot chukat haTorah. This is the chok of the Torah. This is like, if you want to know a chok, this is the chok of all choks. So why would that be specifically when it comes to a purification process? Esther.
My understanding is because of the golden calf, because of the Cheta Egel, is that the heifer is used.
Okay, so that's an explanation and given as to what is, even though it's a chok, some meanings that we read into it. Rashi brings, right, we cheta egel, we bring the calf, right, we bring the parah, right, compared to let the mother clean up the mess that the child made. The egel is the calf, let the mother come. We have many of those parallels, yeah. But my question is a little bit different, right? It could have been a chok when it came to a holiday. Could have been a crazy chok when it comes to garments, when it comes to food, when it comes to some other practice. Why specifically is it this tahara process, this purification process? Why over there do we have this chok of all choks?
Maybe.
Just 1 second, Cheryl's first.
Maybe it's because without being pure, we can not take on building the temple and taking it upon ourselves to do what we really wish we could do.
Okay, so that purity is essential for us becoming what we need to become.
And maybe because of the irony that the person who prepares the para and gets the final ashes becomes impure as well.
So that's all part of the chok. But I'm asking, why have this chok specifically by tahara, by purity? What are you thinking, Ken?
Generally coincides, I think, with the entire Torah. You have a symbolism. You have separation of clothing, fibers and clothing. You have separation of the people. You have the unity of the people and everything else. With the Parah Duma, it goes a step further in that it has to be destroyed. But before destruction, you begin with purity. It's entirely red. It gets destroyed, and then through the destruction, you have a kind of redemption. You go from impurity to purity.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, so that again, that is the full scale chok aspect. But why specifically over here? Yes. They want to hear you though. I'll put an angle so they'll hear you without seeing you.
Any laws that like they make sense and you're gonna do this and you're gonna see the result, that's one thing. To be really pure, I think it's impossible for us to do something ourselves to become really purified and sanctified, because we always have this Yetzer Hara and all the other complicated aspects of being human. So we can't ever actually do things to fully become tahor.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just come up with a law, not if you can come up with, but if there is like a procedure to become tahor and then you've defined it, that's probably the best you can do, because you can't really do it intentionally. Or does that make sense?
I hear that.
Yes, it does.
I was thinking along those lines, just similar to that. Tahara is purity, coming before God, right? So when it comes to what we wear, we understand you wear certain things could have an effect on you. You eat certain things could have an effect on you, right? We think we understand that realm, and we do understand that realm to a certain degree, right? We're constantly learning more and more and learning how much we don't know, but we can relate to that. But when it comes to Tahara is purification. That is coming before God. That is bringing ourselves up to a godlier level. So there we have to recognize this is out of our realm. We're out of our league now. There's absolutely nothing that we can do that will do that unless it is directed by Hashem. Right? That's the only thing. So therefore, when it comes to Tara, so we have to realize that's it. Whatever, if God says this is the way to do it, then that's what we need to do, which sort of relates back a little bit to what we discussed before, Parsha Zachor, right? Even though it might go against our sensibilities, our sense of what's right and wrong. But if you want Tahara, you've got to follow the instructions. And therefore, the epitome of this chok is when it comes to Tahara. Because then that reflects back on the entire Torah. Because even when it comes to the areas that you think you do understand, right? Eating will have an effect on you. You are what you eat. Yeah, you are what you are on a physical level, but you also are what you eat on a spiritual level, right? And all these other aspects also, that's what lets us know if the whole Torah is a means for us to try to connect to Hashem, then the epitome of that connection is through a Tahara process. And then that then reflects back on everything else also that we have in the Torah. Because it's been said along the lines that everything is a chok. Meaning you might think you understand, right? But you understand on a certain level, but that is a small fraction of what is really there. Yes, Cheryl.
I have a question, and that is, when did this come about? I mean, were the Israelites that were in Egypt, were they?
No, in the Midbar. This is with the Torah.
Wait, so in the Midbar is where they were able to get purified?
Paraduma, sure. We had the Mishkan.
Oh,
We had the Mishkan in the Midbar, right?
that's true.
Yeah, so for sure. That it began over there. With the Mishkan, and also keep in mind, a very beautiful parallel that's brought. Shabbos is creation. Creation was God making a place for us in his world. Mishkan, we always have the connection, Shabbos, Mishkan. Mishkan is our making a place for God in our world. But the God place in our world needs to be working with the God rules, his parameters. And that's that Mishkan. And then again, that's the Paraduma, that purification process.
Were they like, so were the people like, it doesn't say in the Torah anywhere that before they could do this or do that they had to
Sure.
purify?
It does.
It does
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah. So you can't be Tameh going into the Mikdash, into the Mishkan, for sure.
Yeah.
Last week's Parsha, Vayikra, we had that.
Is,
Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav, chapter 4, Vayikra.
so we talked about Pesach, but was it for all of the pilgrimage is to Jerusalem?
Okay, so all the pilgrimage holidays, they would become, but Pesach is particular because everyone's eating from the Korban Pesach.
So the other ones like Sukkot, did you?
You don't have to be eating from those korbanos. No.
So you don't have to go through the
Correct.
purification.
Correct.
So the people themselves would have to partake of the.
Korban Pesach, sure, that was the
No,
Seder.
not of the Korban Pesach, but of the Parah.
They have to go, if they were Tameh, they have to go through that process. If they were Tameh, they have to go through that process. They had a heightened awareness of where they were going, what would cause Tumah, right? We don't have that in our world so much, so we don't have this heightened awareness, but they would have to be very careful with
So
that.
in order to not maybe have a domino effect, wouldn't you then try and purification of the 7 days as soon as possible after you knew you became Tamei?
Yeah, you
So
would.
then sometimes you wouldn't necessarily have to do it right before Pesach. You would have done it.
Correct.
weeks
But
ago.
now's the time to raise the awareness for those who haven't taken care of it immediately. Okay, my friends, we'll call it. I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause the recording. Yeah.